What's that, Daddy?
Got it.
What's that,
All right.
Daddy? What's
So it
that?
looks like we are live. Hey, so welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Awakening Consciousness with Asher and Jesse. Sorry about the long time off between shows. I had some traveling to do. I went to the Wise Traditions Conference, the Weston Price annual conference in Dallas, Texas. And because I refuse to wear a mask, it is a 2-day drive for me. So 2 days there, 2 days back. And then we couldn't get our schedules arranged because of daylight savings time. So we're going to have to figure something out about that. But nonetheless, here we go. We are going to talk. I'm going to give sort of my reflections on the Wise Traditions Conference and contrast that with the Metaverse, which is Facebook's new, I guess, product, if you want to call it that, where they're building a virtual reality universe that they're hoping everyone joins in and becomes a part of. But to me, that sounds like a dystopian nightmare that I want no part of. So we're going to talk about that today, contrast the living versus the dead, or the Wise Traditions Weston Price Foundation Conference and the people there versus the people who are super excited about donning their virtual reality goggles and entering the metaverse. So yes, let's start there. But before we do, I want to take a second to focus our energies and intentions on the world and community that we're trying to build. We're trying to build a community of like-minded people to grow, survive, and thrive together in the new world to come. I see a world full of alive, awakened, and intelligent people who are living life together, growing food, raising children, hugging, and doing all the things that make us human. And we're going to contrast that with a world of 3D goggles, health mandates, and other sort of restrictions on your freedom. And that's not a world that I want to join. So in order to have a better world, we need to build it because they're building that world, and we need to build our world. So thank you for that. And let's get started. So last weekend was I think it was the 20th or 21st annual Weston A. Price Foundation Conference. They call it the Wise Traditions Conference, which is sort of a nod to the traditional diets, traditional cultures. People's had a more healthy way of living, and that includes diet. It includes general activities and other things. And they recommend a specific diet because the person that the group was named after, Dr. Weston A. Price, he was a dentist who lived in the 20s and 30s. He went around to all different parts of the world studying the ancient cultures and traditions of the various peoples and tribes from all over the world, and found some commonalities in their diet. Most importantly, that everyone had a sort of sacred food and a sacred or a way that they ate. And the way that they ate was, sort of centering their diet around healthy fats. And that was the most important thing that people ate, was healthy fats. So if if it was the Eskimos in Alaska and Canada and those places, they would eat like seal blubber. If it's Native Americans, they used to eat the buffalo backs, so getting the fat from the buffalo back. If it was a tribe in Africa, they would eat insects and other things to get that fat and protein in there. And so out of that developed a diet and a way of living that, in my opinion, is a much more healthy way of living than what the current modern westernized and modernized diet involves. And so that's how the organization started, but it's definitely morphed into other things, including health freedom. So they're all about health freedom, no forced injections of any kind. And so what you have there is a group of people who are all coalescing on specific ideas on how to live, how to eat, how to conduct their lives, and all wanting to remain unpenetrated by any foreign substances that they don't agree with, and they want to live a free and inspired life, just like us, and just like everyone who seems to watch this show. So that's sort of the backdrop on who the people are. My dad is also the vice president and founding member of the organization, and especially given the recent developments with COVID and all that stuff, with his, I guess, increased prominence and notoriety based on the recent books that he's written and the attention that he's getting with the contagion myth and his coming out against the virus narrative, showing that the viruses don't actually exist and that it's something else that are causing people sick. So he is kind of a minor celebrity in that crowd, and maybe those people think he's a bigger celebrity than he actually is. But anyways, they really love and appreciate his work, and by extension, they show me a lot of support because I am involved in promoting his work and we work together in a lot of stuff. I mean, the companies that I run are to build him up as an author and to forward his work in the world. And so I get a lot of support and appreciation from those people too. And so they didn't have a conference last year, and it was supposed to be held in Atlanta, and there was mask mandates and all that stuff. And this group is one that refuses to do that. So I would hear stories from people who drove 30 hours, 20 hours, 25 hours to get to the conference because, like me, they also refuse to wear a mask. And so yeah, that's. Do you want to comment or anything at this point?
Yeah, sure. A couple of things come to mind real quick. Firstly, going back to the diet stuff, it's really interesting that they've identified some commonalities between, traditional diets, healthy people on the planet. I remember seeing a study that they did between indigenous tribes who have taken on the modern diet versus those who haven't. And the health implications are significant, to say the least. I remember seeing in the studies, the average age of death was like 20 years different. The dental hygiene, the dental stuff was massive. Like the tribe who's eating packaged food and rice and all this kind of stuff, packaged products and whatever. Their teeth are all have fallen out basically by the time they're in retirement age, or not even 40 to 60 type thing, right? They have basically a few teeth left and are in bad health and have all kinds of health problems. And then of course the traditional cultures, the traditional diets, or the cultures who maintain the traditional diet don't. And then the last piece is the other point I want to make is that power base is the term I would use to describe the people and the conference and the event that you're describing. This is a power base, right? So there's people all over Earth who have made that decision and free will to not go along with the objectives of the cabal, and to not be manipulated, and to stand up in sovereignty and stand up for their freedom and stand up for their bodily autonomy and so on and so forth. And people doing that in an organized way, like what you're talking about, creates a power base, and that power base then becomes it can grow and continue to get more powerful and then connect up with other power bases. And this is how we win. This is how the new earth gets built and created. I've seen that happen in the community that I live in. There's a power base here that I view as indestructible. Like outside of China coming in with tanks and bombing us, it's the power's there. There's nothing anyone can do about it. People are not having it. It is what it is. Like the power base is built. And so that's just really important. And that's a really, important piece of the time we're in, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. You're exactly right on both accounts. The Weston Price, I mentioned he was a dentist. His thought was that the teeth were sort of the window into the overall health of the individual. And he noticed that the cultures or tribes or whatever you want to call them that were sticking with the their traditional foods had no teeth issues. They had no other health issues at all. And so the ones that he could see had started adopting the Western foods, the packaged products, the processed foods, they started to develop serious health issues, including, lots of dental issues, cavities, teeth falling out, and the whole nine. And so, and so he drew the commonalities, and it wasn't so much like the specific foods. It was more the food groups, and that it was the fat that was the most important thing. The animal fat was the most important thing, most nutrient dense food that you could eat. And it's been demonized in, the USDA or whatever it is, the government food pyramid and all that stuff. Like you should flip that on its head to figure out what you should really eat. And so yeah. And then on the other part, the power base, it's like, yes, these are the people, these are farmers, these are homesteaders, they're ranchers, they're homeschoolers. They are the people that are going to be able to survive and thrive through this. And all of us coming together, seeing old friends that we haven't seen in a couple of years, it was just a great experience. And like I mentioned, last year's conference was canceled due to the fact that the hotel in Atlanta would not, they were going to require certain things that people weren't willing to do, including wearing a mask. And so it had been 2 years since the last one, and there was definitely a special energy in the air about it. Everyone was not only just excited to see people that they hadn't seen in a while, but everyone recognizes where we are in our stage of humanity. Everyone recognized that, we're at a point of no return, meaning that the cabal has basically gone all in. It's not like they can ever, it's not like they could, okay, all right, sorry guys, we're going to stop this now and pull back. I think it's beyond that point for them. And people at this conference recognize it. And they also recognize that if we're going to have a free and inspired life, we have to build it ourselves. And you could sense the energy, but then you could also talk to these people and realize that, yes, that is what they're seeing as well. And people are, I met people who had, just relocated, maybe out of California into Texas or something like that. Or, there was another person out of Oregon to Alabama. And this was people who had either recently relocated or just relocated, people who were already living in good areas and knowing what they needed to do to get to the next step and to do this. And everyone is on the same page. So when you and I talk about, this sort of collective consciousness and optimism for the future, it's because there's a lot of people like this. There's a lot of people. It's not just the Weston Price Foundation people who are seeing this and knowing that serious work needs to be done and needs to be done now. But it's it's a lot of other people as well. And so that's what gives me such great hope, is that we recognize what we have to do, and people are coming at this from different angles. So for example, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he is founded or he runs the Children's Health Defense Fund, meaning, or it's an organization to, shed light on the dangers of injections, and making sure that people have a voice, making sure that if people have been injured, that they get restitution. And he's sued and won billions of dollars against big drug companies and other corporations who are harming the children. And so he gave the keynote speech. And while I don't agree with everything he said about the existence of the virus, I commend his work and love the fact that we have someone like that, someone who's that high profile, who is basically made it his mission to stop this agenda from moving forward, to stop these injections and to stop the harming of children. And it was a great speech. It was a standing room, standing room only banquet dinner, and it was just a great thing to be a part of.
Yeah. The piece that I want to mention is, it's important for us to get together with people who are in that space, right? Who have that understanding and are just of like mind, to put it that way, or are of a similar vibration, to put it that way, right? But people who are who understand what's going on and are doing something about it and are living in that sovereignty, we need to be interacting with those kinds of people, partially just for our own mental health. Like, you need, to not lose hope yourself, right? If you're in that sort of energy space, because these things are going on, and you will attract those kinds of people and interactions and that vibe into your life as you're on that path and living it. And then it becomes much less hopeless, right? Like, because then you see, oh, there's this new power structure being formed on the planet. It's actually has much more solidity to it, much more truth, much more sort of texture to it than the old paradigm power structure. It is being created. It does exist. You can be part of it, and getting, then what happens from there is so magical, right? So getting into that network, for lack of a better term, of people who are operating in that world is important, because it will allow you to be on mission, have faith, not lose hope, have those great interactions, those inspiring interactions, and those inspiring conversations, which lead to inspiring activities. And you're part of the whole thing, right? And I think maybe partially for me and you, that might be partially why we have very little to no sort of fear about what's happening and what's going to happen, because we know that, I don't want to speak for you, but you can change it if I'm speaking out of turn, but we know that we won, right? Like, we know that we're on the winning side, that there's actually nothing to worry about, because we've maintained our sovereignty. So there's nothing they can actually do to us. That's probably the biggest piece. But then B, because actually, if you look objectively, we have won and we are winning, and that that new world is being created in those kinds of interactions that you're describing.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And it's, you hear a lot of in these circles, like the ascension process or the raising the vibration and all that stuff. And to me, and I think I mentioned this on a previous show, it's like, we need to be doing the activities in our lives that have that high vibrational thing to it. They come from a place of love. They come from a place of, serving God, serving the world. And to me, that's what it is. I feel like I am serving my fellow human by doing the work that I do and making the products available that I have, and trying to get the message of truth out there to as many people as possible, through this show, through my dad, through all the work that we do as a company. And to me, that's me serving God. That's me serving humanity. And, and it's so important to get together with other people who are doing the same thing, whether you're, raising cattle properly, or have a farm that you're running and managing organically or biodynamically, or producing a product that is meant to improve people's lives or health, or all kinds of things. And the conference was just totally filled with people who are on that wavelength. And it was such a great thing to be a part of. And I talked with some younger people there who are, they're looking at a new place to live. People are talking about buying plots of land with other friends, and, maybe living in a yurt or some trailers or something like that, while they can sort of build that community and build their lives. And it goes back to my point that I've made several other times. It's like, we need to change the way that we keep score in life. Like, what is a happy, successful life? Is it taking trips on your yachts and doing all that stuff? Or is it, having a family and raising your children and eating good food and singing around the fire and being part of a community of like-minded people that you can live together with and enjoy the good times together? And to me, that's a more rewarding life than, fancy, shiny things and yachts and all the other stuff that goes along with that, because that will lead to less freedom when you do that, because you have to manage your yachts, and you have to take care of them, and you have to continue to have a high income so that you can support that. And when you have this sort of built-in cost and expenses into your life that you just have to have, that you have, just on a recurring basis, there's going to be less, you have less freedom in what you can do. And so if you're, vice president of mergers and acquisitions, and you have a big, nice house and fancy cars and a boat and all that other stuff, well, what happens when your employer says you got to do something? Well, then you have a more difficult decision to make, because it's like, well, maybe I'd have to give up all my fancy things so that I can maintain my bodily autonomy. And so if you're in this debt, if you're in this world of acquiring toys and trinkets, you're going to be less free to make the decisions that you want to live a healthy, free, and inspired life. And I go back to this again, it's time to make those decisions. And, and it feels like those decisions are being made for us, because, what other choice do we have? What other choice do we have than to, it's a life of, nature, healthy food, family, friends, loved ones, or it's a life of the metaverse and the virtual reality hell that they want people to join in. And so that's why I wanted to, talk about the Weston Price Foundation and the conference on one hand, and then compare it with the world that they're trying to build for us and trying to get us to join that other world. And, so we'll talk about that for a second, but any other comments about the Weston Price stuff?
Yeah, we'll sort of, in between the two topics, one of the notes I took while you were talking is there's two worlds, choose, right? And then you kind of said it, and that's exactly right. One of the themes that for me is sort of the theme of the day over this, now for humanity is, and we come back to it all the time, is sovereignty. And we're here in the 11/11 portal here today. Powerful, energetic time. Good time to be reassessing, making changes, finding your power, finding your superpowers. And I don't know that any or much of that can happen without there being a pretty solid foundation of sovereignty. And that includes, this has been coming through like very strong for me in the last weeks. This includes even aspects of your life that you may not have considered important when it comes to the subject of sovereignty. And I mean family, for example, right? All of your relationships, your friends, your family, your immediate family, like your children, your spouse, and of course, all the normal stuff, right? The stuff we know about, everything that's going on in the world. Of course, you need sovereignty there, but you need sovereignty in really every aspect of your life. You need to walk your path, right? I'm saying all of this for myself completely, but you need to walk your path. You need to be true to yourself. You have to live your path in total authenticity. That means the good, the bad, everything in between, the ugly, the weirdness that happens in relationships, all the stuff that happens in business, everything in your life, has to be decisions that you make in free will with sovereignty, understanding that it's your life path, and any action or choice or decision or even thought that you have, affects that. And the magic and the opportunity, and the magic is the right word, of the world, I don't believe is really open to us if we're not walking our path. And I think part of that, absolute, like a key to that, is being fully sovereign. So yeah, I mean, the two worlds thing is just where we're at. It feels like God is giving us this choice because we're at an ending point of something and a beginning point of something else. And so we have this choice now, everybody, to either choose the new or choose the old and stick with it and see where that goes. So that's the choice point for everybody, right? So everybody all over the planet right now is making change in small or large ways, even if that means, even if there's no real change, even if the change was just, no, I'm fully bought in and I'm rolling with whatever the TV says, fine. But many people are making, massive changes. You have communities popping up all over the world. We run a real estate company here. The amount of calls that we get that are somewhere along the lines of, I'm interested in an intentional community, or I want to start an intentional community, or I need to start a healing center, retreat center. I mean, there's like 10 or 15 groups in this tiny little area we're in right now who are doing some sort of healing center, retreat center, or community-based project. So those new earth communities, as I'll call them, they're popping up all over the world right now. And how cool is that? Because that's, again, going back to what we've been talking about a few minutes ago, that's how it happens.
Yeah. And I met some people there that were, looking at doing that, joining things like that. And it's not just us, it's people all over the world. And so all it takes is first of all it takes is the decision to do that in your own life, and then a little bit of effort. And you can, there's all kinds of communities and people and groups and organizations that you can plug into and get involved and get active. And I'll do one last plug, maybe not the last one, but another plug for the Weston Price Foundation. They have a great organization again. They have local chapters all over the country and even chapters around the world. So I put a link to that in the chat. You can join, become a member. It's only, I think, $40 for the entire year. You get a lot of resources, where to find good food, where to find raw milk, and other resources. They have an app that you can download that I think will tell you the like what's safe to eat and what's not. And so it's just a great organization that you can really join and get involved with, and literally meet people that are in your area and get to know people. And so I would highly encourage anyone to do that. That would be a great place to start if you are thinking, made that decision in your life and want to join up with other people. And so that would be one of, if not the best organization to join. So, and I don't make anything, or neither just Jesse, if people sign up to be a member. It's just a great organization to support. And they do things like, they fund advertising for, there was a ballot initiative in Maine that would prohibit people from growing food on their land. And so, they do things like funding the campaign to say, no, that's ridiculous. People should be allowed to grow food on their land. And so it didn't pass in Maine. So that was good. So they were part of, supporting the good side of that. I can't remember what the language was and which yes or no meant the good thing, but they won, and so that's good. And so it's just a great organization to be a part of. So yeah, let's contrast that.
Raw milk is dangerous, Asher, and that's why the FDA protects us from it.
Right. Yeah. Yes, because the FDA knows what should and should not be put in our body, and apparently, if things are FDA approved, then it's totally safe, right?
I mean, even if they're not,
right?
Does that mean raw milk's okay now? Like the jab? Does that logic apply across the board, or only the jab?
Well, I think they pick and choose when the logic works or not. So I don't know if it's a universal thing. So it makes it super confusing. But yeah, let's contrast
my
that
body, my body, my choice doesn't seem to apply either in this scenario.
No, that only applies when you're about to murder a baby.
So, oh, got it. Thanks for clarifying.
Right. Right. Which is no laughing matter, but sometimes you just have to, ridicule the other side, because, shame and ridicule seems to be the winning strategy sometimes. But anyway, so Facebook comes out, I don't know, at this point, a couple weeks ago, and they're changing their name to Meta. And what they're doing is they're building what they're calling the Metaverse. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this, where it's basically a virtual reality universe. So what they've done is they've created a situation where more and more of our lives takes place online, more and more of our interactions takes place online. And they've tried to, or at least in many ways, destroyed the real world life for a lot of people. I'm thinking specifically in cities. You have to present a vaccine card if you want to get into a restaurant in San Francisco and New York and other places. You have to, wear a mask. You have to do a lot of things that I and I think many others find unconscionable. And so they're creating a real world for those people that's miserable. That's, it's terrible. And so the escape is to put on your virtual reality goggles and join the metaverse. And so you can build your house there. You can, get together, in air quotes, with your friends. You can you can go to a different place just by clicking a link almost. And it's a way to detach ourselves from reality. Of course, they're going to couch it or say that it's a way to connect with people, but that's, it's a way to, in my opinion, remove our humanity and remove us from reality. Because, as people more and more sit on their couch and put on their virtual reality goggles and join this metaverse, it doesn't remove the health implications and the mental health implications, and also physical health implications, and all the other stuff involved in sitting on your ass and doing nothing. And so it's gonna, people's health is going to deteriorate even further. People's lives are going to be more and more in this virtual reality. And it's just going to continue to degrade humanity lower and lower to the point where they will literally be able to direct you and control you down to every last move that you make. And that's their goal. It's been the goal for a while. This is not a quote unquote Facebook thing. This is the cabal using Facebook as the platform for building this. And to me, I don't want any part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. There's a lot there, and I think I'm pretty dark on the screen. People may not be able to see my face. I apologize. I like the sun, but I'm a little sunburnt from the other day. The sun gets very strong in Ecuador. I've noticed every year, like the beginning of the fall until December, it changes. It's amazing. But I do apologize for the obscure lighting. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, everything you said is spot on. It's interesting, right? Because how does that fit in to, obviously kind of what we're talking about here is transhumanism, right? And so transhumanism has been a goal of the cabal for a very long time. They've obviously been putting that out in movies forever. They've been putting that out in papers and other things as well, but they've visually been showing us that transhuman society for a long time. Movies like Ready Player One and a million others come to mind. There's a great movie called, was it Free Brad maybe or something? Is his name Brad? I don't remember, but Free Guy. That's what it was. Free Guy. Where it shows a lot of this stuff too, and a lot of other things. That's actually an interesting movie. But yeah. So the goal, right, is to have your consciousness under their control. They don't necessarily need, they do in the short term, but they don't necessarily need your body, right? The ultimate goal could be to transfer your consciousness from one AI or sort of machine, right, to another. So you don't die, your body doesn't die, and then your soul goes back to source or the other side or whatever. And then you sort of come back into a physical, experience. That's not, they would like to stop that process and have the process be one of, you take your consciousness of where it's at now, upload it to some cloud or some device, and then do what can be done with it at that point, right? We've seen all those movies where people have sleeves, right? And their consciousness is on a chip and it's sort of put into this body or that body, and the body may or may not be a biological body. That's sort of, could go either way, I suppose. And of course, this has massive ramifications, obviously, in all kinds of ways, but including, human reproduction, right? So, men and women fuck and make babies, but they would like to stop that process also, where, quote unquote babies are, born in a test tube, or they're born in some sort of artificial environment. And, all of that is, of course, obviously, this stuff is very obvious, right? But all of this stuff is, it's disrupting the natural God cycle, right? The natural human cycle, the natural world is being disrupted as they play God and try to, create sort of their own artificial world. And so all of these things are steps towards that, right? So we see, when the internet came out, that's changed things. And then from there, we start creating profiles, right? And having accounts that represent us and all this sort of stuff. It's little, and the cell phone, and then being, connected to all of it. And so these are baby steps that move to an ultimate goal of controlling your consciousness without you having the ability, essentially, to go through the natural processes which allow for your soul's journey, your soul's development, etc. So that's kind of some of the things that come up to me. And then, of course, yeah, as far as it, relates to health in the body, again, you're spot on. And, those things work together, right? So the soul and then the spirit at the even higher level, but the soul, has a symbiotic relationship, right, with the body. And so for the soul to properly live its journey, the body also needs to live its journey. And those things are intimately connected. When the soul's having issues, the body has issues. When the body's having issues, the soul may not have the same ability to express. So these things matter. So the idea of a sedentary lifestyle where you're eating, the nutritional equivalent of Doritos, maybe in a pill form or something, as you lay around with your implant that goes in your eye that allows you access to the metaverse, which is all you care about at that point. That's going to be, you can have an adventure, I assume, in the metaverse, and maybe even interesting ones. I have no idea, but certainly you're severing that soul body connection. You're creating an unhealthy vessel, an unhealthy body. And that's an important piece here as well. There's more, but that's enough.
Yeah, there's, and Facebook and the other social media platforms, they make money by selling people's eyeballs to advertisers, right? So if you're using the product for free, you are the product, not the customer. So that's important to remember. So what they're doing is they've created something that you get to use for free, but then they sell your information and your eyeballs and attention to advertisers. And so they have behavioral scientists and people who understand how the human mind works. They understand persuasion. They understand how to get people to take certain actions. And so when you're subject to, and when you put yourself into a world where data scientists and behavioral scientists are putting things in front of you to persuade you into taking an action versus a different action, then who is really making the decision? Is it you? Are you living your own life? Or is it the behavioral scientists and the content creators and the advertisers who are dictating what you do with your life? And so, for people like us, we can sort of see this for what it is and recognize that we want to be sovereign. We want to be the ones making the decisions for our own lives. And we can say, thanks, but no thanks. I'll live in the real world. But for a lot of people, especially, people who are having a hard time right now or not enjoying their lives so much, or maybe you're a young man who doesn't have much dating prospects, or a young woman who doesn't have much dating prospects or a lot of friends or a big social life. This is going to be an attractive alternative for those people. And the amount of people, I think, who are going to get lost in this world is going to be staggering, because it looks cool. It looks like, oh wow, it's like your favorite video game that you can then step into in a virtual reality way. I mean, think how popular these video games are, and these and these other things online that people do, and it's going to be an attractive draw. And the more people buy into this, the more they're going to lose their own humanity, and the more difficult it is for them to be able to interact in the real physical world with even themselves, with other people who are in that world, let alone for people in this world. And so that divide is just going to keep getting wider and wider. The split between the two civilizations is just going to keep getting wider and wider, and all the more important for building your life, building your community, building your everything outside of that world, because I can promise you it's not going to be a fun place to be.
Yeah. That's, you said the quote you said was lost in that world, right? People are going to get lost in that world. That's the right way to phrase it. And that's you as the individual, as the soul who's lost in that world. If you make those decisions, actions have consequences. That's the design. That's the paradigm we're in. So we're in a paradigm of experiencing the results, the consequences of our actions, of our decisions. So it matters, right? Like if you go into that world and get lost, that is actually you getting lost and feeling the consequence of your decisions. And, I've had experiences over the course of my life, some of which I'm still dealing with, where where I've gotten very lost, right? I've gotten very lost. So when I was young, I got very lost in all kinds of things and negative things and, violence and drugs, not really hard drugs, but just sort of that lifestyle of just, sort of thinking that upside down world is correct, and going down that sort of demonic, I use that term because I do think it comes sort of from that side of things, but going through that sort of very negative energy path. I've done that in my life at different times. I've had, major health consequences from decisions I've made. I've had major relationship consequences from decisions I've made, etc. And I've seen not only how difficult that can be when you get lost in a world that you chose to enter through your decisions, but you may not have been aware of the consequences of that and how that was going to look, right? Getting out of that is not easy. Like when you are going in one direction and you have all that energy and all that momentum, and then you want to shift into a different energy field, that's a process. That's not something that you just wake up. Some people in certain ways, especially if it's small level, if it's not really entrenched, you can make certain changes quickly, but other things can take a very long time. And so, getting your soul lost in an AI, in the metaverse, in an AI world of whatever is not a good look. And the consequences of that will be dramatic, and you will feel them. And that's the point.
Yes. Right. And, it's sort of been a long time coming. I think, you could go back and look at the formation of Facebook and all that stuff. But it's really the technology as a whole, not just Facebook, which, could argue is not really a Zuckerberg creation, but more of a CIA creation with Zuckerberg as the figurehead. But I think it's just that sort of world in general. They've wanted us into this controlled state. And I go back to it again, like, do you want to live your own life, making your own decisions, or do you want a behavioral scientist putting things in front of you to be making the decisions for you? And I think that's really what it comes down to. And the more dependent you are on that, the more your life gets turned over to those people, to, the more your life goes into the cloud, the less control, the less human, the less, the less human you become. And so that's the key issue. That's what's behind all the injections. It's self-assembling nanoparticles, which is, technology to hook you up to the cloud. And so this is just another step in that direction. And so think long and hard before you go jumping into the metaverse, because to me, it doesn't sound like much fun at all.
Yeah, and for all you crypto lovers out there, and I own some crypto, Asher owns some crypto. We've talked about, we've given our opinion in the past on crypto. Certainly an interesting speculative asset class at the moment. But for all you crypto lovers, in my opinion, the crypto and NFT and blockchain and all this stuff that's happening right now is very much part of this, right? So if governments had wanted to destroy crypto from the beginning, they could have, and they would have. Not to say that things couldn't have popped up and there could have been things that happened outside of government's purview or outside of their control. Of course, that's always the case. But they could have essentially destroyed it. They could have done a very good job destroying it had they wanted to. This is going back, I don't even remember when Bitcoin came out, right? 2010, 11, somewhere in there. So this is we're 10 years in, right? So we're far enough in that the direction government is going to take on these things is pretty clear at this point. Now you have the whole NFT world going crazy, right? You've got adoption taking place now with cryptos as far as in the world of finance and institutional players, etc. So you've got, the green light has been given for crypto by the powers that be. There's no question about that, even though, yes, sometimes they come out against it in little ways and they ban in little ways and this and that. But ultimately, that's just going to be what we're going through right now, which is the shift from sort of a unregulated market to a regulated market. We're seeing that now with lots of exchanges are now, requiring facial recognition to get into your account, to do any withdrawals, to do with transactions, things like that. We're seeing a regulatory sort of environment start to take shape. That's going to continue. We're going to see larger players get in, and people may continue to get very wealthy. So again, I own crypto. Asher owns crypto. I'm not talking about it from an investment standpoint. I'm just talking about it from the goals of the cabal fit very nicely with a digital monetary world that includes all sorts of digital assets that are hard to understand. This whole NFT thing, and I haven't studied it in depth, but I do have some background in it, so I understand it to some degree. But ultimately, this pairs very well with a digital fictional world, a metaverse, to use that term, where you have digital units of currency, you have digital assets, they're easily transferable. This system fits in very nicely with all that. So I just want to point that out to people who think that crypto is sort of this magic bullet, that's gonna sort of take the cabal's power. It does have that potential. It could be. I'm not ruling that out, but there's also the other side of it.
Yeah, how they could harness it and co-opt it and use it for their so yeah, be very careful when you're diving into that world. But I got to get going. I got some other stuff to do, but it's been a good show today. Sorry, such a long break between shows. I know all our fans were just dying to hear another show from us, so we'll do better.
I got 10 or 15 love letters these last couple of days. Where are you guys?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, I didn't get any. None. Zero.
That's too bad. Zero? I'm shocked.
Zero, man. Yeah.
We'll
it's
have
sad.
to do better. Maybe take your shirt off next time. So
yeah, I don't know that my sort of skinny chest and ribs will do that, but they might. It might. It's possible.
Might. You never know. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we will be hopefully back tomorrow, right? We can do one tomorrow.
I'm in.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Have a great day, everyone.
Have a good day. Take care.